So we have covered up to Swadeshi movement and Bengal partition, right? Now in this session what we are going to do is we will look at moderates and extremists. Okay, so we will try to understand what's the difference between moderates and extremists, and we will also see what are the methodologies or methods that they followed and their ideologies and the concepts. And if time permits, I'll briefly talk about revolutionaries also, or revolutionary terrorist groups, which is different from extremist, and we will look at the difference also. Okay, then after that I'll quickly discuss about Muslim League and some facts which is related to Muslim League and the ideas and concepts of Muslim League through three different phases, the way Muslim League evolved. Okay, so this is what we are going to discuss in this video. I may not discuss about revolutionaries in this video extensively because that's coming later in the chronology, because we are actually following the chronology. So revolutionaries as such will have a separate discussion. So here in this video session I will focus more on moderates and extremists and the most important development which happened in 1907, that is Surat split. Okay, and then we will look at Muslim League and its concepts. Okay, so let's start off with this topic, moderates versus extremists. So if you go for a quick recap of what all things we have discussed, we have already discussed about formation of Congress in 1885. So if you look at this period, okay, the initial period of Congress 1885 to 1905, that means till Bengal division or partition of Bengal and Swadeshi movement, this period is known as moderate phase. Okay, so moderate phase. Now we will look at what are the difference between moderates and extremists. Now the questions that generally asked us, see, if it is prelims you will get certain statements and they will ask you which among the following is correct or wrong with respect to moderates, or the same is applicable in case of extremist also, which among the following is correct or wrong with respect to extremist. Okay, so we need to understand in detail about moderates and extremists and their the way of functioning also. So if you look at moderates, they believed and practiced everything in legal way or constitutional method. Okay, so everything in legal or constitutional way. Now government obviously had no problem with moderates, and in fact government hardly paid any attention towards moderates. Now then, who are extremists? Extremists are those who believed in mass mobilization. Okay, they need boycott. They supported boycott of British goods, services, schools, courts, everything. Okay, they need boycott. Okay, then they need participation from every section of society. That's what I mean by mass mobilization. So participation from every section of society. Okay, so every section of society. So now if you look at moderates, they believed and practiced everything in legal and constitutional way. Now extremists, they look for mass mobilization, they proposed or need boycott, and they need participation from each and every section of Indian society. So extremist doesn't mean that any violence or anything, that we will discuss later when we discuss about revolutionaries. Here when I say extremist, it's only mass mobilization. So basically the extremists, they thought that the methods adopted by the moderates are not enough or not sufficient. So they look for mass mobilization, they look for boycott, they need the participation from all sections of society. But now they had a new demand, that is Swaraj. Okay, they come up with a new demand, Swaraj. And there is a famous statement by Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it. Okay, so that's the idea of extremist. They now look for Swaraj. The difference between Swaraj and Purna Swaraj, we had the discussion in the previous video. Now the point that need to be very clear and careful is that extremists, they are not demanding anything through violent way, but they went for mass mobilization, which I have discussed, like they went for strikes, dharnas, boycotts, rallies, etc. So not violent way, but strikes, boycotts, etc. Okay, so that's the most important point. So when we discuss about the third group, okay, that is revolutionary terrorist group. See, that name is very controversial. Actually, when Indians are talking about them, or when we discuss about them, when Indians write about them, we call it as revolutionaries. Now, when the English talk about them, they call it as terrorist, right? So, actually, revolutionary terrorist group. This terrorist, the word terrorist is actually bringing a different element or different meaning to them. In fact, if you want, you can just write about revolutionaries. So, we will discuss about revolutionaries later. Now let's confine our discussion to moderates and extremists. Okay, so who are the extremist leaders? Aurobindo Ghosh, one of the important leader, Aurobindo Ghosh. Then the famous trio Lal, Pal and Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Okay, so these are the famous leaders, extremist leaders. Now if you look at moderates, who are the famous leaders? Firoz Shah Mehta, Dada Bhai Navroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale. He was a political patron of Mahatma Gandhi. Now Surendra Nath Banerjee. So these were the most important leaders of moderates. Okay, so I have discussed about 4 leaders, 4 extremist leaders and 4 moderate leaders. Now let's discuss about Surat split, which is very important, which happened in 1907. Now what is the reason? See, we have already done an extensive discussion on partition of Bengal and Swadeshi movement. So Swadeshi movement means actually promoted boycott of goods and services of the British. At the same time, there were social boycott. Now the moderates, they basically want to confine this boycott in Bengal or Calcutta or in urban Bengal. But extremists want to extend this boycott or Swadeshi movement across India and each and every part of India. And in fact, Tilak took this Swadeshi movement to Maharashtra, and Lala Lajpat Rai took this movement to Punjab. Okay, but the problem was they used religious symbols, and that created a lot of issues and problems later that we have already discussed. So the point is, the extremist leaders wanted to take Swadeshi movement outside urban Bengal, but moderates basically want to confine the Swadeshi movements within Bengal. And you can see the differences in 1905, 1906, 1907 Congress sessions. Okay, so you can see these differences, but it became violent in 1907. So that was Surat session of Congress. Okay, it became violent, and in fact police came and cleared. Now in this session, Rash Bihari Bose became president. Very important, very important point. During Surat split, who was the president? Or Surat session was presided by whom? Or 1907 Congress session, the president. Okay, anyway, Rash Bihari Bose was the Congress president, and he was from moderate group. Okay, so extremists were expelled from INC in 1907, and that's what we call it as Surat split. Okay, Surat split. Extremists were expelled. Now see, if you look at this, moderates were in majority. Now even the government also liked it, because what happened is nationalist is now divided, right? So earlier all were part of Congress and all were working together. Now they divided. And what happened is Tilak was arrested and sent to Burma in Mandalay jail. So Tilak was sent to jail. Then Lajpat Rai was arrested from Punjab. Okay, Lala Lajpat Rai was arrested from Punjab, and Aurobindo Ghosh retired from politics, and he became a sannyasi. So he said complete goodbye to politics. Now this weakened the nationalist movement. So nationalist movement at that time was reached at its peak because of partition of Bengal and Swadeshi movement and involvement of these leaders and extending the Swadeshi movement to other part of India, and also by using religious symbols they mobilized masses, because their central idea is basically mass mobilization. But because of Surat split, okay, they were expelled from Congress, and these two were arrested, and he said goodbye to politics. So the nationalist movement weakened. Now after that, later you can see rise of revolutionary group. And this is not much discussed in schools and school textbook, because the methods adopted by them are slightly violent, and in schools you are taught basically the Gandhian methods, because nobody want you to get inspired by bullets and guns at the young age, right? So revolutionaries, like when we discuss, we will see what are the causes of emergence. Okay, then we need to see what are the method they adopted. Okay, then we will see the impact that the revolutionaries made, and we will see the difference between these revolutionaries and the revolutionaries after 1918. So all those things we'll discuss when we discuss about revolutionaries in that chronology. Now we will not be discussing about revolutionaries here.